Hi everyone, it's Lindsay with High Altitude Astrology, and today I'm going to be bringing you a video about the transit of Venus through the sign of Cancer, and specifically some of the aspects that it's making, starting with the new moon that happened on August 18th and continuing through the end of August into the full moon, which happens on the 2nd of September. What happened with Venus on the new moon is that she made a sextile to Uranus, and you can see that here on the screen. And this was interesting to me, which actually inspired me to want to make a video about, because as I was talking about it being a part of the new moon chart, what happened was I think it was either that day or the next day, I saw a video put out by Russell Brand, who is a comedian turned YouTuber, podcaster / spiritual being. and what he put out actually piqued my interest, because it, to me, very much related to this Venus sextile Uranus energy. But before I get into the details of that, let me explain what I feel this Venus in Cancer sextile Uranus and Taurus is all about. So Venus has to do with our loving energy, our social energy, our relationship energy. And in the sign of Cancer, that's a very sensitive, watery, emotional sign. So with Venus in the sign of Cancer, we are wanting to receive the experience of satisfying our need for being social, or satisfying our need for experiencing beauty or expressing creativity in this very tender way, or this very feminine way. Because if you think of Cancer, it has to do with nurturing, and it's the symbol of being a mother, mothering energy. So this is a very sensitive sign for Venus to be in. And I would think with Venus in Cancer that we would be tuning in more to want to experience really more sincere kind of expressions of love, and more comforting and really experiences of love that make us feel more secure. Now, it's sextiling, like I said, the planet Uranus in the sign of Taurus. And by the way, Venus, one of the signs that it rules, is Taurus. So there's a layer here to the Uranus being in the sign of Taurus that connects to this Venus in Cancer energy. And Uranus in Taurus has been in Taurus for a couple of years now, and it'll be there until 2025. And what I feel is happening with Uranus and Taurus is that collectively, because Uranus is a collective energy, but it's also an energy of awakening and of an energy of progressing and evolving, even though it can at times feel kind of shocking or sudden. But in the sign of Taurus, which is an earth energy that deals with, for one thing, the natural world, but it also deals with the material world, the things that we value in a material way. It also deals with our own self-worth experience, and what self-worth means to us. I mean, Taurus is a very solid energy. It kind of protects what it has. So does Cancer, but Taurus kind of more from a material perspective, Cancer more from an emotional perspective. But Uranus in Taurus is what is helping us as a collective really start to bring these issues of like the environment into our consciousness, and how are we going to really address the issues around environment. Because again, Taurus deals with the natural world and Uranus wants to progress. But on another level, it's talking about this particular dynamic, Uranus and Taurus, is talking about like revolutionary values. But it's interesting because I feel like it's almost taking us back to maybe a time when we valued things more than we do now. For instance, because Taurus, ruled by Venus, is a relationship energy, I do think that Uranus and Taurus is actually revolutionizing relationship dynamics. And I think it's, in a way, kind of elevating relationship dynamics, progressing them. And especially with this sextile to Venus, because Venus in Cancer, again, it's like we want to feel nurtured and we want to feel loved through the nurturing principle. So this is a very beautiful sextile. And going back to what Russell Brand was talking about, I will add a clip right now so that you can see specifically what he was saying.
I want to discuss the cultural phenomena surrounding the WAP or WAP video. But what I'm especially interested in is the emergent polemic around the use of sexual imagery and female potency. A Guardian article said the video is unapologetic in celebrating the sensuality and sexuality of women. It isn't shy or coy. It's about the loud articulation of female desire for sex as they want it, and it centers them as active participants with agency. Well, that's absolutely bloody terrific. The backlash was immediate. Scores of people took to the internet to defame women for celebrating their genitalia and coital desires. Nothing wrong with that. In a manner not reserved for male rappers or singers. My key point I would like to make is, do we achieve equality by aspiring to the values established by the forces or authors of the hierarchy and system itself, i.e., do women achieve equality by aspiring to and replicating the values that have been established by males? Let's have a look at what some commentators online and in mainstream media have said about this video and how it is a vessel for some of the complex arguments that happen at the moment, and what are the real values that we should be aspiring to. Myself, with my own, my attitudes towards sex and sexuality have altered as I've gotten older and as I've just changed. I wouldn't want to place a value on it, but I must say that, I'm aware of the power of female sensuality and sexuality. And when I watched that video, I was spellbound by its potency and power. From a political perspective, I don't know that demonstrates progress, because gender and sex aside, what are the values that we're collectively aspiring to? Objectification of the other, objectification of the self. Is objectification something that we're aspiring to? Sexuality and sensuality as commodity. See, this is one of the things that really interests me most, I suppose, about the culture war, is that regardless of where you land on this apparently wide spectrum of left versus right, the fact is that the end point is a product, a commercial product. You can't unravel this system or challenge this system using the means of a commodity, a beautiful blob of product. If you can be sponsored by Nike or Coca-Cola or any brand, or if you can be housed in a mainstream record label, then by definition the content is not radical. That's not a critique, that's just a fact. Radical means it's outside of the mainstream, it's a threat to the mainstream, it's a challenge to the mainstream. And the mainstream, I would argue, is not about the sort of wallpaper of the culture war, colours, gender, sexes, whilst these are important issues. It's about these deep structures themselves. Who has power, who can influence, who can control, who dominates. And I would say, whether it's left versus right politically, or many of the other, I would argue, if not false dichotomies, I would say narrow dichotomies, we're not actually altering the ability of ordinary men and women and people who identify in different ways to live lives that are free from oppression and truthful expressions of who they really are.
All right, so you can find that video online if you want. Russell Brand's video, I'll put it in the link, but also the video with which he's talking about, which is it's a song that came out recently, a video for a song by Cardi B and a person named Megan Thee Stallion. And it's a very evocative video of these two women and other women rapping and, you know, just dancing and being who they are. And so I point this video out, and I point Russell's video out because I think that this Uranus sextile Venus is really bringing his point into more clarity, because he's talking about, you know, being revolutionary, that would be Uranus, in our values, Taurus. And I would take it a step further and say with the sextile to Venus in Cancer, there's also something about it that is really wanting to bring in more of the creative expression through a maternal energy, through a mothering energy, a caring energy, a nurturing energy. And he's sort of pointing out that in this video, he's not saying it's wrong, but he's saying, are you actually breaking any culture barriers, Uranus and Taurus, if you are basically sort of fighting fire with fire? You know, you're not really changing anything. You're just sort of continuing to recreate the same creative expression or the same value, essentially, that we have been doing for a long time. And, you know, astrology is layered, so we have to, you know, understand that, like, there's this huge thing going on with Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn all in the sign of Capricorn that's really transforming Capricornian ideals of the patriarchy and sort of this kind of male-dominated energy, meaning the male archetype, not necessarily just in men, but that archetype for power and for authority and to dominate. You know, this whole structure is going through a big change. And I think this Venus sextile Uranus at the time of the new moon, that's what was going on that day too, in the sign of Leo, is also an important piece, because the new moon is a seeding time, a beginning time, and Leo is our creative expression, but it's also like our dignity. It's our pride, that it's the kings and queens of the zodiac. So there was something significant then about it actually being a new moon when this Venus-Uranus sextile was occurring, that was speaking to how do we want to bring ourselves out into the world in our Leonian, kingly, and queenly ways that incorporates these perhaps changing values that are supported by a more nurturing expression of the loving energy in relationships and through our own creative expression. So that is one piece of Venus in Cancer that's going on right now. And again, new moon time was sort of the beginning, moving forward after the sextile from Venus and Uranus. Now Venus is going to move on, and we can see, looking ahead, that on the 25th of this month, we'll be getting Venus opposing Jupiter. And here you can see Venus and Jupiter creating an opposition. And now Venus is going to go opposite this whole stellium of planets in the sign of Capricorn. And so basically Venus is going to be kind of challenging in a way, as much as Venus can. I mean, Venus is more of a internal kind of yin energy, receptive. So it's actually going to be tested, perhaps, against these planets that it's going to be opposing over the next several days, starting with its opposition to Jupiter on the 25th. Venus in Cancer opposite Jupiter in Capricorn. This has definitely some kind of opportunity for awareness and growth, continued awareness and growth around these values that we may be expressing in a more maternal way, in a more loving and nurturing kind of way. I want to say compassion, that's more Pisces, but it's going to be opposed Jupiter, which wants to expand our perspective and help us understand more on a philosophical level, a bigger picture of things. And again, in the sign of Capricorn, which Jupiter's in its fall in that sign, it just means it's not as strong in the sign of Capricorn. So perhaps, Venus here will kind of win out with its ability to lovingly and sort of gently keep the internal sort of connection to that desire to really express our creative self, our social energy, our loving energy in that very sensitive, Cancer, nurturing type of way. Now, this can also be a dynamic where Venus might get a little too sensitive, because that can happen with Cancer, where we're so attached to our feelings, it's hard for us to really see outside of them. And Jupiter may be saying that part of the understanding that needs to be incorporated is actually to have a thicker skin. It's actually to be able to keep focused on where we're going, or the bigger picture, and not get bogged down too much in the emotions and the feelings, which seems contrary to Venus in Cancer. But again, the bigger picture, the expansion of our perspective and the growth perhaps will be coming through having more of a deeper connection to our ability to be very persistent and very grounded, and very much about knowing that we need to, in essence, kind of keep moving forward. Venus will also be making a trine to Neptune, and that will be happening on the 27th. And this is a harmonious angle in water signs. Neptune's in the sign of Pisces and Venus is in the sign of Cancer. And this feels like a very lovely energy. Venus very much in Cancer very much relates to Neptune and Pisces. Neptune is about our spirituality and transcending the ego. So in the sign of Pisces, Neptune rules Pisces, so Neptune expresses itself very well through Pisces. This is a very much of a healing energy. We may see something about that out in the general public, but this just feels like a really lovely trine energy that's going to help create some healing too, as we are moving forward with Venus through this sign of Cancer. Venus then will be opposing Pluto, and this is going to happen on the 30th of August. We can see here Venus opposite Pluto. We can expect perhaps some kind of confrontation, especially in relationships around this time, especially because Pluto it is about transformation, but sometimes when we're not aware of the need to transform, we can stay stuck and kind of dig our heels in certain situations and move into more trying to control and manipulate and contain things. And so this is a Venus that's really going to require, this is a dynamic that's really going to require sticking to our guns when it comes to knowing what we feel and what it is we desire in relationships, and the desire for that nurturing principle to be involved in our relationships. And so this may mean some letting go perhaps of certain relationships or certain relationship dynamics, but because that is the true healing when we do ultimately resign or resolve to transform and to transmute, we can then sort of free ourselves from those shadowy energies that keep us stuck, and then we can really free up energy to put into other expressions. And this can be a very creative dynamic with Venus and Pluto if we are ultimately allowing the transformation to happen, and then focusing our energy into more constructive expressions. But again, because this is an opposition, this will definitely be bringing up dynamics in relationships. But I see it as a very significant time for continuing this kind of collective investigation of our values and how they relate to the home and to being nurtured, and to how we nurture others moving forward. And then finally, when we get to the full moon on September 2nd, we are going to see Venus in opposition to Saturn at 25 degrees. Saturn has a similar quality to Pluto in the sense that it too can very much be about endings and kind of picking ourselves up by the bootstraps and moving forward and doing the work that's required. And again, in the sign of Capricorn, Saturn is very comfortable in this sign. This is the placement of the sign that Saturn rules. So in this dynamic, it's kind of fortunate that Saturn is in the sign of Capricorn, because it is saying that the energy is there to do the work, to go through all of this expansive transformation and growth that we are all collectively going through right now. And so with Venus opposite Saturn, this is going to be, again, perhaps bringing up dynamics in relationships, asking us to really kind of mature. That's what Saturn is a lot about, being responsible. There's another term that's used to describe Saturn. It's having personal authority. So it is kind of asking Venus in Cancer to sort of, again, put a lid on being like overly emotional about things, but at the same time, knowing what you feel and knowing what feels good to you, knowing what makes you feel secure, knowing what makes you feel safe, knowing what makes you feel comfortable and nurtured, and really going after that, or at least having that as your value, Venus. And so Saturn is saying, if we're not really getting our needs satisfied, it may be time to really, cut the ties where that needs to be done. But at the same time, it's also about, growing up and about maturing. And if we've been perhaps, too emotional about things, overly emotional, that we need to be able to recognize that too. So I think that's kind of the main message of Venus moving through Cancer right now, is it's helping us to understand how we feel. But I ultimately do think, going back to that very first point about the Uranus Venus sextile that happened at the new moon, values are changing, and it's really about values in relationship, because Uranus is in Taurus, a relationship sign, and now Venus being in Cancer, connecting with Uranus. This is talking to us about our values in relationship, and what are they, and how do we want to be in relationship, and what are our values in relationship. And I really feel like we are connecting more with this Venus in Cancer with a very nurturing personal energy, nurturing to ourselves. And also, again, with this connection happening at that new moon in Leo, it is about having dignity. It is about having courage. It is about having pride and being able to have that in a relationship, you know, and to express that through our values that really support us moving forward. So that is my talk about Venus. I'd be very curious to know how it might be manifesting in any of your lives. If you want to leave a comment, and if you like this video, please subscribe. I really appreciate it. And I will see you at the next video. Take care.